Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran, and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. And I have with me a very special guest, Mr. Ram Madhav of the BJP. Now, he needs no introduction, but just for the benefit of our viewers, he is the National General Secretary of the BJP. He is a former national spokesperson of the RSS. In fact, he was the RSS spokesperson until 2014, when after Prime Minister Modi was elected to power, he became the General Secretary of the BJP. Now, he's a man of many parts. He studied engineering and political science, and then he also took to journalism. He was associated with a couple of publications of the RSS in Andhra Pradesh, from where he hails from. And he's also associated with a public policy think tank based in New Delhi called India Foundation. And he keeps writing articles and has authored many books. So, Mr. Ram Madhav, thank you for making time to be on DD India. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's start with the COVID-19 situation obtaining in India and around the world, Mr. Ram Madhav. It's changed the way people communicate, offices work. People are increasingly using video conference, or people are working from home. But if I were to ask you, you are a man in public life. How has this situation changed the way you work with your party colleagues and office bearers?
Not just me, Rameshji. It has changed the life of many a politician in the country, rather in the world, I would say.
True.
We all have to, at least for some more months to come, we all have to get used to a new way of conducting our politics. I will certainly see a lot of change because of it in the entire political culture itself. Because once you start doing things differently for several months, they become integral to that activity. So I'm sure post-COVID politics or political activity is going to be different from what it has been before the COVID. As far as I am concerned, we now got used to using social media platforms, whether it is Zoom or WebEx and all these things, to communicate with our cadres. After we started using technology to communicate with cadres, our cadres also slowly started picking up. I see that to be an important part going further in our day-to-day politics. We have to now devise a technique of virtual rallies.
That's a new
normal. I would
normal.
call it. Yes, that will become the new normal. You speak through one of the social media platforms, you will address hundreds and thousands of people through that platform. That's going to be, I think, the political activity, nature of the political activity, for at least for some time, because as predictions go, finding a vaccine for this pandemic is going to take time, and that means you have to maintain social distance. That means there will be a number of restrictions in conducting public activities. I think a new model of politics has to be, initiated, and I think we have already started it in our party and in our organization.
And elections are due in Bihar later this year, followed by Bengal and Assam and other states next year. So how will political parties campaign going forward?
No, I think some of the old practices will come back in this, like door-to-door campaigning, which we have given up almost. We are nowadays confined to organizing big rallies, big processions. We have stopped reaching out to people on a door-to-door basis. Probably that will come back. You remember we used to publish pamphlets. Those pamphlets will come back. And of course, a big role for social media.
Now let's come back to Prime Minister Modi's announcement a couple of days ago about the 20 lakh crore economic package or stimulus package for the economy. He's used the word vocal for local. Now, by that he means go local to go global. But some would say it is it's similar to the slogan of your called Be Indian, Buy Indian, or for that matter, Swadeshi, which is the RSS main plank or theme for many decades on end. In other words, buy a Maruti, not a Mercedes. How will things change for the ordinary Indian going forward when we talk about going local to boost the economy and various sectors going forward?
There is a very significant or important difference between what we broadly call as Swadeshi and what the Prime Minister has talked about in terms of Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, I would say. Self-reliance begins with Swadeshi, undoubtedly. But sometimes even Swadeshi is misunderstood as though we are shutting ourselves from the rest of the world, which Swadeshi is not about. When we are talking, or when Prime Minister is talking about Atmanirbharta, or self-sufficiency for that matter. What we are saying is, look at the history of all the powerful countries, so-called powerful countries, economic powers in the world today. They all began by, first of all, strengthening their fundamentals, economic fundamentals. They stood on strong economic fundamentals, created their own brand, created their own economic identity, then spread into the world. Look at the history of, for many people, China is nowadays a big, fab. So look at what China has done. Throughout the first 30 years, until Mao was alive, it was a closed country, completely closed country. Post Mao, during Deng's period, they developed internally. They strengthened internal economy. For that respect, they have opened up, but with a focus on developing their own economy. That's what Prime Minister is talking about. You have to strengthen your fundamentals, your local, the capacity that exists at the local level. You have to exploit it fully so that your base becomes very strong. Then stretch your hands throughout the world. So it's, in that sense, it's not, somebody told me going back to socialism days. No, not really. We are only talking about, we are actually in that sense emulating all the real developed economic powers in the world. Strengthen your economic fundamentals, economic base, then expand into the world.
And talking about the package itself, Mr. Ram Madhav, how will it benefit the ordinary Indian, the migrant labor, the poor, the working classes? What might be in it for them going forward as well?
In the last few weeks, there have been a number of measures by the government, some by even the Reserve Bank of India. They were all directed at tackling the economic fallout of this coronavirus. A big package of about 1.7 lakh crores has been announced with welfareism at its core. It was a welfarist centric package. We don't have any inhibitions on accepting it, because that was the need of the hour. We needed to help our poor population, population of the lowest strata. So 1.7 lakh crore, which has helped some 400 million 40 crore families in getting their rations, in getting their gas corrections, in getting their 500 rupees in their bank accounts on a monthly basis. This has helped stabilize them. Otherwise, country would have gone into hunger, into lots of other problems. So that welfare package was the first step. In the second step, we tried to address the challenge of job creation. Now in India, 70% of the non-agriculture jobs are created by MSMEs. So MSMEs have suffered because of it. When I say MSMEs, remember, Prime Minister has put a lot of emphasis on startups. Right. In the last 5 years, hundreds of thousands of startups have come up. So all those startups and all the other traditional MSMEs, all of them needed big support. And the economic package is directed at giving them fresh support, fresh strength, so that they can again revive the job creation capability again. Otherwise, there was retrenchment happening, people were losing jobs. So job losses, etc. will be addressed. Now, we have to do many more. It's a 20 lakh crore package. We have not even done half of it. Not even half of it has been announced. So the overall target will be a comprehensive one. We are not just addressing only one sector. We are going to address all the sectors that have been affected by this virus.
And Prime Minister Modi has spoken about human-centric development, but the opposition party, Congress in particular, Mr. Chidambaram, for instance, says it's only a headline, but the page is blank. The other leaders of the party say, they speak about the PM Cares Fund or the Central Vista project. What would you tell the Congress leaders or the opposition, other parties, for instance, when they talk about these issues in particular?
Sadly, the opposition is not really behaving in a constructive manner. In a democracy, opposition does have a role. They have to stand up and point out if they find anything really not good for the society. But unfortunately, in our case, they blame us for headline grabbing. That is precisely what they want to do, by criticizing things that are actually there is nothing there to criticize in them. They bring up extraneous things like Central Vista project. We are committed to taking care of the any type of fallout of this coronavirus, economic fallout in all forms of it. That doesn't mean all other activity will stop. Government is committed to taking care of the, kick-starting the economy, or achieving growth rates again. But does not mean government should stop everything else. Other things, they will progress as per their schedule, but our focus will be fully on addressing the present day concerns. In that sense, any constructive suggestion. For example, at one point they have suggested that you should give 7,500 rupees to every poor family. These are constructive suggestions. We welcome them. Whatever is possible will be incorporated in the package. But just for the sake of criticism, if Mr. Chidambaram or somebody wants to criticize, and then, I don't want to talk too much politics about it, but there is a lot of contradiction within the Congress party. One leader will welcome it, another leader will criticize it. I don't know.
And Mr. Ram Madhav, you're also a keen follower of international relations and foreign policy in particular. Talking about the origin and spread of the COVID-19 from Wuhan in China to all corners of the world, what's your assessment? Is there a thinking as to how it began in China and spread to other countries, including India? And should China bear some responsibility for what's happening?
Look, Ramesh, I know lots of people are talking about, it, and generally, like any other people, we Indians are also very fond of conspiracy theories. But I would only say this much, that there is some responsibility on China for the important fact that it has failed to alert the world on time about the real threat, the intensity or the threat of this virus. Had it acted on time, and had it not allowed the virus to escape into the outside world, it could have definitely contained it, just as today we are containing it in areas, in districts, in containment zones. Had China acted on time to contain it, its spread from China to rest of the world, probably it would have been a great help to the entire world. In that sense, yes, China has a responsibility. But what is the origin of this virus? Probably more work needs to be done, and at an appropriate time. Right now the priority is to tackle it. Whoever has committed this mistake, whether it is man-made or it is a natural thing, these are all the things that we will certainly come to know.
Indeed. And we hear a lot of commentary from the Chinese embassy spokespersons. They keep talking about one China policy, and they keep referring to how India adheres to one China policy. But some would say that why isn't China adhering to a one India policy? So what would you tell the Chinese, for instance, when they talk about one China policy vis-a-vis Tibet or Taiwan or Hong Kong?
As far as India is concerned, broadly speaking, we have traditionally, I'm not just talking about our government, but traditionally we have adhered to one China policy. But it's also an unfortunate fact that China refuses to reciprocate on that. But I'm not complaining, because as far as India is concerned, we are clear about what we are and what is our geography, what is our history, what are our interests. We don't depend on any other country's acknowledgement or ratification for that.
And talking about the China-Pakistan economic corridor, for instance, or the recent incidents at the border, what do you make of the situation of the relations between India and China today as we speak, especially in light of these incidents, as I mentioned?
You have seen in last 6 years sincere efforts being made by Prime Minister Modi and for our government in ensuring that our relations remain cordial and to the extent possible mutually beneficial. From India's side, nobody can point out even a single instance where probably we have caused any damage to this relationship. But it is true that from the other side, there were instances which we can complain as there was a potential for damaging the relationship. But India has behaved in a very responsible manner. We are not looking at any tension or any conflict between our two countries. So we have engaged in a proactive diplomacy, but I will only add one sentence. Proactive diplomacy with strong ground posturing. That has been our position vis-a-vis China. We have not yielded our ground, but we followed a proactive diplomacy model to maintain good relations with our neighbor.
Indeed. The other issue is the the evergreen issue of terrorism now. There's been a surge in violence and terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir in particular, and we've seen the incidents, the infiltrations also go up and incidents at the line of control. What's the situation like from your standpoint in Jammu and Kashmir today, especially related to terrorism and cross-border terrorism in particular?
August last year, we have effected a major constitutional change in the status of Jammu and Kashmir. Removal of Article 370 has now led to complete integration of the state in the constitutional entity of Union of India. The way the people of Jammu and Kashmir, especially the people of the Kashmir Valley, have responded to that change is certainly an important thing for all of us to take note of. I have dealt with the state for many years. I've seen for minor, small provocation, there would be massive flare-ups in the valley. But last 8 months, we have not seen any major public outburst from the people's side. Even when leaders were in jail, there were not such big outbursts of protest and anger. That shows that people of the valley largely are ready to sail with, continue their lives under the changed new status. They have attempted, they have lived under Article 370 for 7 decades. They want to experience life without 370 for some time to see. So our effort has been to give them maximum benefit, maximum developmental benefits, so that they will enjoy a good life. Whatever they were losing under 370, they should gain when the 370 is no longer there. This effort, in which the people's support of Kashmir, is a very important thing for all of us to keep in mind, because when we talk about terrorism, we must understand that it's largely today coming from across the border. It also then shows that Pakistan, even when the whole world is struggling with coronavirus, is continuing with its nefarious activity of pushing infiltrators and terrorists into Kashmir. There is definitely an increased activity along our border with our border with Pakistan. So we are alert, our security forces are alert. In the last, I would say, summer has just set in. In the last month or so, about 2 months' time, a number of operations have been undertaken by our armed forces. In many cases, we have neutralized terrorists in a big way. In some cases, we also suffered important losses, which is very unfortunate. Officers of the level of colonel in military have lost their lives, which is unfortunate. But the terrorism that is emanating is mainly from across the border. We will tackle it with utmost toughness.
And talking about the domestic situation in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, Mr. Ram Madhav, when can we expect political activity to resume? For instance, when will the delimitation conclude and elections will be held? And for instance, when can the Kashmiri Pandit community expect to return to their, to return to the valley sometime going forward? So any particular thought or thinking on those lines?
No, talking of political activity, I don't agree with this proposition that it should be resumed, because it has never stopped. Okay, COVID is a phase during which the activity all over the country has stopped. But otherwise, you remember we have conducted elections to local bodies, like, panchayats, municipal bodies, district bodies were to be conducted. So we were continuing with political activity at one level. The assembly elections are due. Under the new status, delimitation has to happen first for us to go for the elections. So I think a delimitation commission has been constituted by Home Ministry. It will start its work soon, because everything has stalled because of this coronavirus. So I think as soon as we get out of it, the delimitation exercise will start. As far as I understand from Home Ministry officials, it will take about 6 months' time. That means I'm hoping that elections will be if possible towards the end of the year, but because of winters and all, if we can't do it, maybe next year in 2021 we'll certainly have elections to the UT Assembly.
And talking about the Kashmiri Pandit community in particular, Mr. Ram Madhav, is there any concrete plan or proposal to encourage them to return to the valley?
It has always been there. Remember, Kashmiri Pandits issue is no longer a political issue in that sense for us. It's a major responsibility and commitment of all of us, especially us, the BJP, because we have all along talked about it. So when we came to power together with PDP, we have made some efforts. Not very substantial, not very successful also because of various factors, but we did make efforts to see if we can get the Pandits back in the valley in big numbers. But we realized that what is required is not just creating some colonies for them. We should be able to create safety for them, dignity and honor for them. For example, we have allocated or earmarked a large number of jobs for them, 7,000 jobs for them in the valley. We could not fill them up because not everybody is ready to come unless you have security there, unless you have proper dignity, honor there. How will they go? So those who went also had certain experiences in the valley. When they go to a remote area, their security, honor, dignity, everything becomes a challenge. So what is important when we talk about Kashmiri Pandits' return is concerned, we are very much committed, but we have to first of all be able to create that kind of atmosphere in the valley.
And talking about South Asia in general, Mr. Ram Madhav, how would you describe SAARC today? Is it dead? Is it comatose or on ventilator? How would you describe SAARC today?
SAARC is an arrangement of countries in our immediate neighborhood. We all came together to have this kind of an arrangement under SAARC. But unfortunately, because of one country, I don't have to specially name that country, the SAARC experiment has not progressed as expected. But remember, these alliances do not remain permanent forever. You go, as you become stronger, as you become important, you grow beyond them. So we grew beyond SAARC. SAARC is important, don't take me wrong, because I'm not saying SAARC is less important. SAARC is important, but from SAARC we graduated to BIMSTEC. We started talking about the entire Bay of Bengal region. Thailand was included, Myanmar was included. We went further in our relationship with ASEAN, India-ASEAN. Today we are talking about the Indian Ocean, Indo-Pacific region. So today the sphere of our interest has substantially grown. Having said it, SAARC is important. That's why Prime Minister, one of the very first steps that he took was to convene the meeting of SAARC countries and create SAARC fund. We are committed to helping all our SAARC neighbors. India's foreign policy under Prime Minister Modi is neighborhood first, together we grow. So we want all our SAARC neighbors to grow together with India and India to go together with them.
And some say there is always an opportunity in a crisis. Now, there is talk that because of the corona pandemic, the global supply chain might shift out of China to other countries such as India. So can we expect the government to lay more emphasis or reinvent, so to speak, the Make in India program, give it a makeover to attract FDI back into South Asia and India in particular?
COVID or no COVID, one very peculiar geopolitical scenario situation was evolving in our neighborhood. That was essentially the conflict between the USA and China. And I'm sure you must be reading in paper that the US was putting a lot of pressure on its partners in Europe to follow its own line when it comes to China and all that. Our situation was evolving. There was certainly an opportunity for India to attract more foreign investment, etc., into our country. So towards that, we have started efforts long back, long before the corona actually happened. One great advantage that India has is skilled manpower. And the new areas that are going to dominate, to become the main agenda for the world post-COVID will be healthcare, environmental issues, high technology like artificial intelligence, all these things. In all these areas, India is a leader. So India naturally has an advantage today. But here I would like to add that India has to do a lot of work with respect to its legal system, its land laws, its labor laws,
Ease of business.
its business environment. It has to improve. Prime Minister has been consistently pushing our institutions towards that. Our banking system has to become more attractive. Our land laws have to become more attractive. At the same time, you have to have the social responsibility has to be also maintained. India has close to 300 to 350 million workers. Their interest should not be jeopardized while doing all these things. It's a huge task, but Prime Minister is very committed. He is very keen. He emphasized on the need for greater reforms.
You spoke about the Indo-Pacific and ASEAN. Let's shift westward to West Asia. How would you describe India's ties with the Gulf countries and the Arab countries? Some would say that Prime Minister Modi has invested a lot of time, energy and effort into ramping up ties with West Asia. So what's it like today as we speak, the relation between the two regions?
One of the great success stories of Prime Minister Modi's diplomacy in last 5-6 years has been our relationship with the Gulf countries. I mean, there are countries in which he was the leader visiting them after almost 3 decades. Prime Minister Modi has a style. He builds bilateral relations also based on his personal relationship with the ruler on the other side. So he has built good personal equations.
And one important aspect of diplomacy is people-to-people ties, India's so-called soft power and the Indian diaspora in particular. So is there any thinking or in the government or the party to leverage the diaspora going forward to take care of their interests as well? For instance, there was talk about allowing NRIs for a proxy voting, for instance. So is there any thinking in the government or the party on those lines?
See, last 6 years, one dimension on which we, foreign policy is at one level a continuum. Each government only takes forward the policy of the previous government. But each government adds its own nuances to it, its own flavor to it. One of the important flavors that we have added to it is diaspora diplomacy. Under Prime Minister Modi, our diaspora all over the world has become an active and integral part of our diplomatic efforts. So one important effort has been to give that sense to diaspora that after all you are there. India is your home country, where you are living is your country of living. So you have to work as a bridge between these two countries. You have to be actively participating in that. And I can tell you, the diaspora has today started playing that important role as a bridge between the mother country and the host country, so which is a very good thing. Diaspora has many demands, including the one that we are talking about, the voting rights for NRIs and all that. They are all under active consideration. At an appropriate time, decisions will be taken.
Sure. On that note, thank you so much for making time to be on DD India and speak to our viewers. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.